Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Actually, I was hired by the mayor about 3 months ago, and it's great to see his handiwork. I haven't actually been in the theater, and I've heard lots about it, but it's great to be here. I've got a strange accent. I know. I've lived lots of different places. I was born in America, then I went to Australia and lived there for 20 years, and then came here about 12 years ago, and lived in Liverpool, and now live in Bristol. Actually, I live on weekends in Camden, actually. So it's a great, you're doing great work there. But the reason why I mentioned, besides helping to understand my accent, is I've just stumbled upon the opportunity to spend my career helping cities with big events. I lived in Australia, and I was lucky enough to be one of the first people hired to be part of the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games. So I was one of the senior executives that raised all the private sector money. And then when I came here, I was hired to go to Liverpool and to build the team that over a period of 5 years actually helped create and deliver with all the partners in and around Liverpool, the European Capital of Culture. And of course, that's the closest thing to what the European Green Capital is. And I was, again, in the right place at the right time, and was asked by George to come in here and actually give a sense of what could the ambitions be for the European Green Capital. And I'll talk a bit about that in a moment, but I wanted to just relate a few of our experiences in Liverpool. It's been a long time ago now. It was 2008. Actually, I was hired in 2004. The European Capital of Culture was awarded to Liverpool in 2003. So you can see the massive amount of time that we actually had to prepare. I mean, I was there for 4 years before our year even started, whereas, you know, you compare that to the European Green Capital, which Bristol is in 2015, and we actually won the title in June of 2013. And so we only had 18 months. And now we have you know, less than nine before it starts. Fortunately, it's an entire year, so you don't have to do everything in January, but I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But the European Capital of Culture was an amazing experience. And why am I talking about that? I'm talking about it because it was an opportunity for us for it not just to be about the city centre, for it to be about the neighbourhoods, about the other high streets in and around Liverpool. And we started right at the very beginning. The first people that we hired were people to engage with outside of the city centre, to engage with the neighborhoods and the communities, to understand what they wanted to do. Culture is a very broad thing. It's everything you can possibly imagine that we do when we're not sleeping. And that was a real challenge, to engage different parts of the city and try to get them to understand what was possible and what could be done and how they could feel part of it. But not just that, how they could take advantage of the interest, the excitement, the focus, the tourists that would come. How did we create something that the entire city would feel part of? It's not easy to do. Did we do it perfectly well? Of course not. Did we do some things right? Yes, we did. And a few things I just wanted to share with you. Firstly, we started by hiring people that went out to talk to those people who were, in some instances they were bids, and in some instances they weren't. They're just neighborhoods that had high streets. But it's actually about trying to understand what they wanted to accomplish. The other thing is that we created some very big events that went outside the city center. And that cost money, I know that. And we'll talk about that with respect to the European Green Capital in just a moment. But we tried to understand what the stories of the various neighborhoods were, and we created and we built big events that went out there. Let me give you an example of something that was linked to the European Capital of Culture, as well, some big events. One was a huge puppet show. Have you seen the Sultan's Elephant by any chance that happened in London? Were you seriously? Yeah, that was several years ago. They actually have this company called Royal Deluxe. Thank you, very good. Royal Deluxe created these huge puppets, and they're made up of, well, they've got an elephant, but they've got a little girl, and they've got a dog, They've got a big diver, actually. The diver wasn't part of the Sultan's Elephant, but in Liverpool we created an homage to the Titanic because a lot of people don't realize that White Star Line was headquartered in Liverpool, as was Cunard Lines, interestingly enough, at the turn of the century. It was a huge part of the economy, and it was a huge part of the story of Liverpool because many of those people that worked on the Titanic actually were from Liverpool. Most of the orchestra, you know, the orchestra that all died on the Titanic, that all went down together, they were all from Liverpool. They were from, many of them from the, played in the Royal Philharmonic. So why is that interesting? Why is that important? Well, those people lived in different parts of Liverpool, different neighborhoods. And so when we created this amazing, huge story that actually got worldwide media, it was a story that went out to the neighborhoods because the neighborhoods and the relationships between the characters. So I'm not explaining this very well, but the story was about this diver who went down, and this diver is like 50 feet tall. Right? So just imagine it's all about make-believe. But this diver in this story went down in the ocean to go to the Titanic and to retrieve a box of letters because there was one letter from that diver's brother that was going to be sent to the person who died in the Titanic's daughter. And the daughter he wanted to get this letter and bring it back and give it to the daughter. So it was a story that played out in the whole ramparts of the city with these huge puppets, but related to the neighborhoods. It took money, but it demonstrates, I think, what we tried to do and what the city still is trying to do in helping to tell stories. It's about big events, but it's also about things, it's also about transforming and surprising. Some of the biggest surprises are just closing roads. I know that the councils hate that, and it's a difficult thing. But when you do interventions like that, when you do major interventions, and some of them are easy and some of them aren't, but when you actually change the way that people deal with a normal part of their everyday life that usually has cars, and when you make it pedestrian, when you pedestrianize it, and you give the artists and the shops an opportunity to use that as a canvas, it is incredibly powerful, and we did a lot of that in 2008. So some big things that took a lot of time and a lot of understanding about the culture of individual neighborhoods and how to engage with them in telling a bigger story. That was really important, and it's something that we learned in leading up to 2008. The other thing that we learned that was really powerful is the opportunity for the young people and older people to come together to tell the story of their area. I had no idea of the power that this would have, but it was something that was so compelling and so successful that we did it we had to do it over 2 years in order to build the capacity of various neighborhoods to create something quite significant for 2008. But we underestimated the power of bringing really two parts of the spectrum, age spectrum, of neighborhoods together in telling the stories of those neighborhoods that are often lost. You know, I don't need to tell the artist in the audience about that, but it's something that, you know, the culture and the heritage of various neighborhoods are easily lost, and it's something that we wanted to use arts and culture to be able to safeguard. So I wanted to just give you a little bit of understanding of some of the things that we did around 2008, but also wanted to give you a sense of the European Green Capital. And even though it's still relatively early days, I was hired at the end of last year. I brought a very small team together at the beginning of this year, so we're really into our beginning of our 4th month. Huge amount of work to do, but incredibly exciting because it's just amazing to see the energy and enthusiasm that exists in the city and the city region linked to things sustainable, to this way of living. I don't come from that background. I come from a background of trying to use big events to help cities. So for me, this has been a revelation. And it's also been something I'm completely surprised by what I discovered in Bristol. I mean, I got to say, I've lived in this country for 12 years, but I had no idea what was here. I had no idea the creativity, the depth of the creativity. I had no idea the depth of some of the industries, particularly the industries linked to clean technology and bioscience and advanced engineering. Some of these things many of you probably take for granted. But the profile of Bristol is so much lower than what it should be in so many different ways, from across the creative industries, across academia, and it's really a city that's waiting to be discovered. And this new chapter in the story of Bristol started 40 years ago. I had no idea that curbside recycling started in Bristol. As a matter of fact, Bristol's got the best recycling program, and so, some of you may think that it needs to go a lot further, but some of the best waste recycling program in the country. In terms of energy use per head of population, it's the lowest of anywhere in the country. It's not only about waste, it's also about renewable technology, and not just things that are happening already with solar PV, but also the opportunities to transform renewables with the whole marine and tidal area, which is just waiting to be discovered. There's the whole dimension of nature and access to green spaces that many people have no idea about, just the extent of the natural environment in and around the Bristol City region, and the stories that can be told about that. Also the food and local food stories here, and there's a Food Connections program that's going to be in May of this year, which will be the precursor to a huge program that's going to happen, backed by the BBC in 2015, to help people understand the power of local food. There are some amazing inventions that are world-renowned, actually. One is called the Bristol Pound. It may not be as big as it wants to be here, but I've got to say the reputation for that as a currency solution, a local currency solution across the globe, is phenomenal. There are people that are coming from all over the globe to discover how they've done it. And clearly, you can tell from what I'm saying, Bristol Pound is going to play a significant role next year. The whole concept of cities being happy, what does that mean? Well, there's a program called the Happy City program and Happy City Index. The Happy City Index just happens to be the only measurement in the world that goes down to the neighborhood level. All other quantitative measures only go to the local authority level. Well, you can't really do much with information that you get at a local authority level. You actually need to go down into the neighborhood level to understand it. So the power of what is already happening here is quite significant. The opportunity for Bristol as the first green capital in the UK. And it's fair to say that the UK government sees this as a great opportunity as well. As a matter of fact, George went and met the Prime Minister and Eric Pickles and Greg Clark in October of last year and said, look guys, this is not about us. This is not about us in the city region. This is about UK PLC, because we're the first one to host this in the UK. And we have a chance to demonstrate, not just to the rest of the UK cities, but to the rest of Europe and other parts of the world, what we are doing as a city. We are not perfect. We are a city that is on a journey. We do some things incredibly well. Some things like transport is not all that great, but we've got a lot of investment going into it, and we have plans. But we want to be a laboratory for change. I know I say that word very strangely. I've been trying to learn how to pronounce laboratory. Is that
Laboratory.
Laboratory, is that okay? Is it getting right? Every time I say that, somebody says, oh my God. But we're a laboratory. We're a laboratory for change. And you know what's so fantastic about that is that it's not just a laboratory for change for people and their attitudes and behavior. It's a laboratory for change for the businesses that are going to get involved with what we're doing. It's a laboratory for change for the local government. I mean, George, I'm sure he said something about the green capital, and he is the man that actually created that concept of a laboratory for change. And that's the power of what we have an entire year to be able to do that, and that's what the government is getting excited about. And it's not a laboratory for change for the city center. It's a laboratory for change for the entire city. This is going to be a living, breathing, citywide destination. That's what we want to create. That's what we're trying to create. The 2015 company, which is what I lead, is a very small entity, and it's what we call an enabler, a facilitator, a facilitating brand. We want to be able to take some of the great things that already exist and be able to take them to another level. We also want to bring in some resources to be able to focus on specific projects and programs in various parts of the city that are able to take those projects to another level. But also critically, we want this to be not just about Bristol and the city region. We need to make it, and we need to give it, we need to make it more a national and international program, and we need to give it that profile. And that's the role that we're going to play. If there's one thing I heard when I first came here, it was you won't believe all that's happening in this area around the city. If and everybody says this, if we just knew what was really happening, if we had the opportunity to bring together and package up what's already happening and to be able to tell the story in a powerful way, that would be one thing. That would be fantastic. But we hope to be able to do that and go a step further. How does that affect? Now I know many of you aren't from around Bristol, and many of you are. But I guess the thing I want to say is the role that we are playing in engaging the various, not just various, all the partners across the city and also the neighborhoods, is it's about saying, what do you want to do? We want to provide a framework for what's possible across 5 themes of food, nature, energy, transport, and I'm forgetting one. There's one that's food, nature, energy, transport, and waste or resources. You know, the whole closed loop, sharing economy. I mean, that's, and the whole community dimension and shared responsibility is going to be a fundamental part of what we do. Also a fundamental part is making sure this is not just about Clifton. It can't be about that. It's actually got to be about how do we share this responsibility? How do we make sure that what we learn in some neighborhoods are shared across? How do we try to reduce fuel poverty? I mean, there are some significant things that we are going to try to do in this process, and to provide a catalyst, not to try to make everything happen in 2015, but a catalyst to ensure that projects go beyond 2015 and actually they themselves become sustainable. So the engagement and the involvement with the town centers and the individual neighborhoods across the city and the city region are absolutely going to be fundamental. Another key part of this is going to be the way that we wrap this story together and the way that we provide not just a canvas, but also a promotional mechanism to ensure that everybody that wants to has a role to play throughout this entire year. We want to be able to, for instance, to isolate and focus attention on one area of the city region in a particular period. That's one way that we will be able to showcase and highlight the various partners that are going to be part of this. But we are going to be creating a tapestry that will have a number of different layers, from green spaces and trying to improve the green spaces that exist. Some of them are very good, some of them are not great. We also are looking at the derelict spaces and some of the worst derelict spaces, and what can we do with them? How do we mobilize and how do we help mobilize not just financial resources, but people resources to be able to make a difference? How do we connect those partners that already exist, like this amazing facility and what you do here as well? So hopefully I'm giving you a sense of the ambition hopefully I'm also giving you a sense that this is not going to be about just events that happen in the city center. This is going to be about how do we reach out and make sure that all parts of the city, and even the city region, are part of this overall story that we're going to tell. And how do we do justice to what is an amazing opportunity for the UK, but also we need to hand this thing back to the European Commission, this title, even stronger than when we got it. And how do we ensure that it just becomes the first stage of this journey and not the last stage of the journey. So thanks for the opportunity. I think you got, to be honest, this is the first town center outside of the middle of the city I've been invited to speak to, and well, that just demonstrates, I think, how focused you are on the role that you're playing here and the power of the bid. So thank you very much. I welcome any provocative questions.